Okay, so in the last video, saying where the other pages are going to live inside this one may have sounded a bit confusing. And it may not have been strictly true. So the other pages aren't actually going to be pages. And let's start by defining the body of our page, and that will make things clearer. So the body of a HTML document is what is shown to the user. The head is what is not shown to the user, but can do things like import static files like CSS or JavaScript files. It can do things like set the title of your page and things like descriptions and other things for Google to be able to index your page properly and things like that. So the head is not shown to the user, the body is shown to the user. So in order to be able to create these pages reasonably easily, we want to avoid having to rewrite the head and the footer in every page. What we want to do is instead be able to simply say this head is going to be shared across all of our pages. So for example, let's say we want all of our pages to have this title called Fancy Blog, for example, or any title you wish. And then what we would say is say, using what's called Jinja templating language, just copy what I'm doing just now, and I'll explain it in a moment. We're going to say this. And this is not HTML, it is Jinja. And Jinja is a language that is used to simplify the creation of HTML, and Python, and in fact Flask, uses it for this purpose. So what this does is it says inside the body we're going to define a block, and this block is called content, and that's everything it's doing. It's defining a block of HTML code that will be going in this section once we have written it. So if we go into our templates and create a new HTML file and we call it something like login, now we can delete all of that and simply come in here and say extends base.html and then say block content end block. And here we can write whatever it is that the login page is going to display our users. So it would be something like a field for username and a field for password. So as you can see, this extends base.html simply places the content that we write in here inside this page, replacing this block here. And then if we wanted to create a register page, we would simply have to copy this, but with different content inside this block. So it simplifies the process because we no longer need to have all of this in it. We simply have to have whatever content is interesting for our login page. So let's go ahead and create the login page. The first thing to do is define where the content is going to live. So if we want to create something that the user can interact with and fill in some details, we're going to need what's called a form. And a form is just that, is something that the user can fill in and then press a button for submit. And then we need an input. And the input is something that the user can interact with and write something to. It's things like text fields or password fields or checkboxes and things like that. And an input of type text is simply a text field. And an input of type password is just a password field where the text is hidden with the small bullet points instead of showing the text. Okay. So as well as the type and the input, we need to be able to identify which of these is which. So we need to be able to know which one is the username and which one is the password. In order to do that, we're going to give one of these input fields an ID, an identifier. that was not what I wanted to do. Instead of username, we're going to use email. And here we're going to use password. Okay. Now the user is going to be able to see these two input fields when they navigate to it in their browser. Now, there is one small caveat. This code here cannot be rendered by a browser. So a browser doesn't know what this code means. Python knows what this code means. So in order for our users to be able to essentially use this code, we need to not access this file directly, but instead give it to them with our Python code. So we have to create another one of these endpoints, and we have to do what's called rendering the template. If we do not do that, and instead click one of these icons here, what we see is this. But we do have our two input fields here. This one is a text field, and that one's a password field. So in order to be able to use these codes, and for them to make sense, we have to render the template using Python. So let's do that. Go into your app.py, and instead of returning hello world here, what we're going to return is render template. And we are going to have to import this. And the template we want to render is login.html. Flask already knows that this template lives in a templates folder. Okay, so then we press play, and we can then go into Chrome and say 127.495, and notice how that code is now disappeared. Okay, so now we've rendered the login.html template, and we've displayed these two things here. But there is no submit button, so we have to create that. And this is how we would do that. So now go back into Chrome and refresh, and there we have our submit button there. And now the only thing we've done is really created another type of input of type submit and given it an identifier of submit button. And I do realize we're not going into much depth with HTML here. If you do find it a bit confusing, worry not, we will keep exploring it. I don't really want to bore you with this is how you make all of these different things in HTML, because you just don't need them just now. But as we do need them, we will go over them. Okay, so by the way, if we go into Chrome, notice how the title is fancy blog up here, which is what we've defined. But the login page has no title defined. It is indeed extending it from the base.html page. Okay, so in the next couple of videos, we're going to be creating a few basic CSS files and adding them to our page, making sure that the login form looks a bit better. And then we're going to make sure that the login form actually does something. And we are going to also make the registration form. So I'll see you in the next couple of videos, and we're going to be able to add our users to the page and start interacting with them. So I'll see you there.